did it. We did it. We did it.
Amicia, I want to see Mommy. I don't want her to be dead.
Hugo.
I want her to come back.
A Plague Tale: Innocence convinced me it was worth trying out when it just seemed to me that it was a gritty adventure game about children caught in the middle of war. Upon venturing further into the game, I quickly found much more in store for me. It was a harrowing, often horrific journey for two estranged siblings learning to love one another while braving a plague of bloodthirsty rats and the clutches of those seeking to profit from its devastating effects. Plague Tale: Innocence released in 2019 by French developers Asobo Studio for Xboxes, PlayStations, and also for Translucent Aperture's operating systems, Windows. Our story takes place during the 100 Years' War, but it quickly becomes apparent that this game is really just hanging out in the time period for its accoutrements and exoticism, as there's very little historical accuracy attempted here.
It's more serious than that.
That's not a bad thing, mind you, as it makes the game pulpy and fun, but if you were convinced by the marketing that this was some Children of War historical epic taking itself as seriously as The Last of Us, let's say, you're in for a surprise. That being said, the game is definitely not pulling any punches in the violence and gore department, and it balances a pretty potent blend of heartwarming and gut-wrenching in equal measure.
Hey, what are you doing? Stop!
Sorry! We have to get out!
Amicia!
This way!
The story stars Amicia and Hugo de Rune, two siblings of noble descent who hardly know each other due to Hugo's chronic illness, keeping him isolated since birth. The children's mother, Beatrice, is a renowned alchemist who's been using her skills to treat her son, but she goes missing after the family's castle is raided by armored fanatics known as the Inquisition, who are after Hugo for an unknown reason. The two barely escape the clutches of these men, and Amicia finds that there is much more to Hugo's condition than their mother ever revealed, and which makes him a prize people would kill to obtain. To make matters worse, swarms of insatiable rats have infested the land and made traversal incredibly dangerous. Amicia and Hugo must venture across the hostile French countryside in search of a cure for his worsening condition, cheating death from man and beast alike. The player primarily controls Amicia, and you're often accompanied by an NPC, which is usually Hugo, but you'll also get a chance to team up with almost every side character at some point, as the story dictates. Amicia's character arc feels very much like Lara Croft's in the Crystal Dynamics reboot, a somewhat posh and innocent, not for long, young girl thrust into a nightmarish situation where she's forced to kill to defend herself. Like reboot Lara Croft, Amicia is initially fraught with guilt after her first kill, but quickly leans into becoming John Rambo as she's moved to rage at the Inquisitor's murderous actions. It's not ludonarratively dissonant, but it is perhaps a quick transition. Asobo Studio is likely intentional in not belaboring the emotionality of this transformation, though. A lot of the characterization in the game has this economy to it, and while they're probably not precious enough about some of these moments, I could appreciate the studio not milking them for all they're worth like some companies that rhyme with brony. Other touches that feel Tomb Raider and Last of Us inspired are the prevalent callouts in combat from you and enemies alike, and the cinematic camera angle as you take cover. Which frames the points of interest in the area you just entered. Most specifically inspired by these games, however, is the crafting system. You'll be encouraged to pick up everything you find, from saltpeter to animal skins to twine, so that you can upgrade your soul weapon, the slingshot, craft ammo for it, and buy passive abilities that let you use fewer resources to craft ammo, or let you craft faster inside of combat. Amicia is quite the crack shot with her slingshot, and you'll gradually unlock more satisfying and interesting ammo varieties to toss, such as being able to burn away guards' helmets with acid to line them up for a headshot, or ignite torches so you can herd rats away from your path, or even extinguish light sources guards are holding so that the rats can attack them. The combat requires good reflexes and coordination, and the sound of Amicia's slingshot finding its mark substantially enhances the reward of the hardest sections. Plague Tale is often billed as a stealth adventure game, but that's a little misleading, as the game trends more and more towards combat in the game's second half. You'll have your share of walking and talking sections and, move some objects around in the environment to reach higher places, but the lion's share of the game is this sort of emergent gameplay fulcrum of trying to stay hidden while knowing you may need to jump out of cover and knock some heads to get through an area. Early sections of the game have you performing the classic crouching and waiting for guard patrols to pass, or distracting them with thrown objects so you can sneak behind them. The scenarios are pretty cleverly balanced, especially the ones that factor in the rats with guards that have helmets or shields of their own light sources. All these variables push you to try out the breadth of your arsenal, as the situation allows, but I did notice that the last third of the game pushes you to try far more risky, proactive ways to progress, which prove very frustrating in several circumstances. Even fully upgraded, the slingshot has trouble when dealing with multiple attackers in open combat, and sometimes ranged attackers join the fray too, so that means dodging their projectiles while trying to fend off multiple one-hit kill attackers. And this combo in particular made the last level an absolute slog. But these instances are difficulty spikes, not the norm, and the average quality of combat, stealth, and puzzles are the right amount of challenging. No individual aspect is necessarily best in the industry, but they are all well crafted and engaging, never overstay their welcome, and coalesce with beautiful alchemy. No pun intended. Few games can boast such cohesive design, where all the parts are on the same team creatively, and this is a major reason why Plague Tale is such a compelling creation. While Plague Tale's gameplay is certainly enjoyable, the real selling points of the experience are the clever set pieces and the grimly alluring presentation. First off, Olivier de Rivière, the prolific French composer, delivers a chilling cello-based score that just feels right, and any fans of his work on Vampire, I never know how to say that, will recognize and appreciate his contributions here. As for the locations themselves, they pop with incidental detail and remind me a lot of the meticulously crafted spaces in games like Batman Arkham Asylum, BioShock, and The Evil Within. Books and scrolls stylishly litter the halls of ancient libraries. Torchlight dances across stained castle and dungeon walls, and human and animal corpses are stacked high across lonely farmers' fields. Based on how authentic the art style is to the time period, it's no wonder I mistook the initial advertisements to mean the game would be a historical, realistic epic like Kingdom Come Deliverance. But with every realistic touch, they're all ratcheted up just a little bit so that they become hyper-realistic, each detail touched up with eye-catching flourish.
Come on, let's take a closer look.
It's also a welcome bonus that while much of the level design and assets are very linear and bespoke, trademark Nth Review, there are well-hidden side patches throughout, housing landmarks which trigger observations and provide much appreciated context to the world. The most impressive convergence of style and design are the game's truly intense set pieces. The palpable tension of traversing a battlefield piled with dead bodies and swarming with rats, with just incidental light sources to guide your way, is a majorly gruesome highlight. Another section in which you must escape a farm surrounded by rats who have killed so much livestock that they literally stack by the dozens is so horrific and unsettling that you will soon feel as frightened as little Hugo does. Many more like this exist, but they're too fun to spoil for the first-time player, so I will merely urge you to go experience them firsthand. Of course, the experience would not be half as gripping if the player did not enjoy or appreciate the characters. Plague Tale takes an interesting approach in that characters are more often defined by their actions and not lengthy dialogue and cutscenes. Amicia, Hugo, and the alchemist, blacksmith, and pickpockets that they befriend are all survivors in a world of increasing danger, and they don't have time to waste being sentimental or philosophizing. That said, Hugo and Amicia have a palpable connection that grows over time as their extreme situation allows them to make up for the time they spend apart and learn to appreciate each other more fully. Amicia is gifted with a subtly realized arc of her coming to terms with her own bravery and role as her brother's protector. She possesses much vulnerability and lashes out at those closest to her before she comes to realize her own strength and begins to practice patience and kindness. Hugo himself is a little less appealing as he veers into the whiny, "I want my mummy" territory too often.
I want to see mummies!
But he maintains a charmingly sweet countenance in the face of the unrelenting darkness around him. The side characters are more of a mixed bag for me, except for Lucas, a gifted ward of an alchemist working on a cure. Oh my god. A gifted ward of an alchemist working on a cure for Hugo, and whose abilities as an alchemist and loyalty as a friend make him both integral to moving the plot forward and also provide welcome reliability in a world of predators and opportunists.
We're going to see Lucas again.
I hope so.
I like Lucas. He's nice.
The other side characters are given too little personality in my opinion, acting more as power-ups for gameplay, outside of the female pickpocket who pretty much just curses like a Game of Thrones character and talks too much.
I'll ban that fucking banner!
You'll never make it.
What about you? You're just gonna stand there?
Fucking shut the fuck up. While your companions can be a little flat or feel a little gamey, I still liked most of them and they suitably prop up our main characters. Now before we leave this section, I have to let you know how much fun the Inquisition are as bad guys. They're run by a rogue clergyman and his lackeys are covered in themed Templar-style armor, and the average acolyte looks like a tattooed druid. Seeing the lengths these guys will go to in order to obtain Hugo's secret is chilling, and I really appreciated how the game didn't irresponsibly conflate the evil of this sect with the Catholic Church proper, like most movies do, as there are clear examples of a local priest and a high-ranking bishop denouncing this heinous cult as being against the will of God. It's not preachy or heavy-handed, and it makes the Inquisition even more frightening because they're acting completely outside the Church's jurisdiction on an unhinged mission with no attempt at religious justification. How's that for a new spin? So, yeah man, the game looks and sounds incredible for what was supposedly a pretty small studio back in 2019. Clever scenarios in the game give you fun ways to experiment with stealth and combat at your leisure. Throw in an emotional, intense, and often bone-chilling story with likable characters you want to succeed and villains you love to hate, and you've got quite the experience. An X factor that the game possesses is that despite Plague Tale being a largely linear, cinematic third-person action-adventure game like most of Sony's recent exclusives, Plague Tale does one better than these games by being far less interested in itself and respecting the player's time more. Now, while I respect The Last of Us and enjoyed its scavenging, crafting, and especially its ending, I burnt out because the game just kept going on and on and on, and providing me little sense of achievement as I went. And as I mentioned before, Plague Tale doesn't belabor its emotional moments like they're pushing for Oscar nominations. This level of economy in storytelling and gameplay means it keeps up a good pace throughout, never dragging, even as it encourages you to be thoughtful and careful about your next move. The game's also about 10 hours or less, which is probably half of what The Last of Us or the average Uncharted or especially God of War 2018 is, and that could be a big deal for some gamers who would like to feel like they aren't playing the director's cut of everything they buy. Now that's not to rag on extra content or just going the extra mile. It's hard to complain when more is given in our stingy times as a gaming industry, but tight design like this can make replays far more enjoyable and much easier to remember fondly as a result. Few games in recent memory have quite entranced me with their atmosphere, characterization, and set pieces like a Plague Tale Innocence does. I can safely say that this game entered my pantheon of favorite games ever back in 2019, and upon replaying it recently, it only solidified its spot on the list. Studio Asobo delivered an awesome experience here, and the good news is that there's more coming. The main reason why I decided to dig up my 2019 review at this particular time was because a sequel called Plague Tale Requiem is on the way October 18th of 2022. For those cool cats who have Game Pass subscriptions, like moi, you can play what will likely be one of the best games of the year, day one. So hopefully this review will compel you to go out and lose what innocence you have left playing the first Plague Tale so that when October 18th hits, you'll be ready to swarm the fields of France all over again with your boy here. Until next time, au revoir.